Hey, welcome. I'm starting a new YouTube channel, intending on documenting some of the stuff I learn as I progress through my diploma of project management. It's an online course, and while the content is interesting and logical, it's very hard to engage without people to talk to. So I'm going to be talking to my phone. Um, and yeah, the goal is to just go through once a day some of the content or something interesting that I've learned that day. Sort of like creating a dialogue. At least there's some, not just information coming in, but there's some information going out. Helps me engage with the content more. So I want to go through today, at least, um, the structuring of a charter. Now, again, some of this is debatable of what needs to be and not needs to be in that charter. Some of it's high level, some of it's not included or required in low level or smaller projects. But I've set out a structure at least to try and give some logic to the process, because I found there was no real, you know, order to it all. There was a lot of, there was obviously at the beginning you want to have the project title and the reference number and the date issued and whatnot. But there was no sort of logical reason behind, what subjects come up next in the charter. And I genuinely believe that there is some logic to be applied. And it goes back to what I believe the age-old question is: whenever someone suggests something, those questions that could always be asked: who, what, when, where, how, and why. And I think those questions specifically can be ordered in a manner that is, I suppose you could say, more or less like a sales pitch. So, depending on the company or the circumstance of the project manager, you may be presenting the charter and the project idea as a pitch to the stakeholders and to the sponsors, sorry. Um, and so, yeah, like to progress through, some of the content in a particular way might be more comprehensible, might be more, easy to align with. And I think, yeah, there's definitely a logical flow. So I'll get into that now. So project identification. Obviously, you want to start the charter document off explaining what it is and which one out of all the company's documents it is. So we've got the project identification. We've got the project title, what the project is. We've got the project ID or reference number, identifying it, and the version number, if it's received any updates, possibly even a change log, documenting, what's been changed. You've got the document owner, the authors, document information, yes, change log, edit history. Table of contents, executive summary. So table of contents and executive summary, giving you a bit of an idea of what's to follow and what the view on it is. And the next section, so I should have said, we're not going to progress through the charter in that same way of who, what, when, where, how, why. I'm going to shuffle it around a bit. We're going to do it a little different by looking at it as in what, who, why, scope, how, when, where. Now, I've swapped scope in. That's not typically part of what people ask, but that I feel is necessary, and we'll see a bit later, to go a bit more in depth as to what. So we actually got in the first one, who, what, when, where, how, why. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's because the what we've elaborated on. Now, in project management, there's two sides to everything. There's the product, and then there's the project. There's two actual faces of management. You've got to manage not just the product or the thing that you're selling, or the building in building and construction industry. You don't just have to manage the building and keep it to scope. You've also got to manage the project and keep that within its own constraints. So there's two sides of management, and yes, there's two aspects of what. We've got the what of the project, which we see at the beginning, project identification. What are we looking at? When you come into the meeting and say, all right, we're here to have a charter, debrief or whatever it may be, what is it that we're looking at? Oh, it's the project 011 off the ground, or it's project XYZ, 987. And then also the executive summary and the contents, looking at what it is we've got in our hands or before us. And then we'll go into the who and the why, the exactly what, or the scope, what we touched on, how, when, where. And again, exactly what is to elaborate on what. We've got the what of the project, and then we're going to go in later and look at the what of the product, or the charter scope. So the next category, which would be the who, is authority and stakeholders. So in the authority and stakeholders, we sort of look at the who is involved in this project and what levels of authority, governance, involvement, or effect do they have. At the very top, obviously, we've got the sponsors. They control the money given and dispensed into the project, and give authority and sign off on anything that involves a level of cost, or requiring of more funds. You've got the stakeholder register, giving us a big look at who's involved in this project, who's affected by it, who then also is playing a role to affect change in the project, and those who have significant authority or leadership, if there may be a board of directors as well who oversees the project, whatever that may be. Those people, anyone who's got a particular effect or stake in the project, whether it affects them in a good or a bad way, will be in the stakeholder register. A governance structure, so a breakdown of the authority and chain of command within that structure. You may have sponsors who have set aside a particular project manager or a particular friend of theirs who will oversee the project in effect of a director, rather than them just working as a project manager or giving advice as a stranger. You may have someone set in a particular place of authority, or someone who oversees a particular part of the project. You might find that the board of directors is very concerned about PR after a number of years of negative representation in the media and the eyes of the community, and they're very, very concerned about making a good impact and appearance on the community. So they may set aside one or two people who have a significantly higher level of influence, even though they're not involved in the project as project managers or managers, whatever, in order to execute or maintain a high level of good and positive representation in the community, whether that be in a geographical or environmental consideration to make sure that there's absolutely no risk of a quote-unquote contamination, or whatever it may be that they've previously been involved with. There may be some sort of governance structure that goes against what we would typically see as hierarchical, whatever it may be. You've got the project managers, what the team looks like, and within that project management group, who's doing what, and the roles and responsibilities of all parties involved. That's a bit of the who. That's we've got the what, the who. We've got the why, which is justification. We've got the business case. So once the meeting opens up with the what are we looking at? Okay, who's involved? You would then open up to the why. Why are we here? What's the whole point of it all? We've gotten the context and we've gotten the peoples involved. Now let's look at why are we here? Obviously, we open up with the business case, including the problem and opportunity statement, strategic justification and financial justification, the cost-benefit analysis and financial evaluation and ROI, risk analysis and options analysis, expected benefits, strategic alignment, and vision. Now, I have a very logical reasoning for why it flows like this. Obviously, you need to open up with the business case, but the reason that it flows with the way that it does and ends with expected benefits, strategic alignment, and vision is we don't want to just come here and discuss ideas or discuss the processes that we're going to engage in. That's almost a necessity. You almost don't need to discuss what processes you're going to use if you're not going to have any substance or follow up meeting after that, or moving along from this phase. You want to boil things down to a value or a substance or a change. I don't think that a meeting has any significant results. I use, after having meetings, the word results as synonymous with actions in response. A meeting which has no actions in response to be produced is a waste of time. If there is no one going, okay, after this meeting, I'm going to review the minutes, take out any critical information, and put it through to management or HR for evaluation. Then we can start looking at, okay, we need to fix this, so we need to change that. If there's nothing that results from a meeting, there's no actions that result from a meeting or responses or change, it's useless. What did we talk about? We could have just had lunch, had a chat. Why did we come and take time out of our day to talk about all these things if there's nothing that's going to result from it? So I think it needs to boil down to a kernel, or at least something that we can take into the next section of our discussion. So we can as if you were to sift through or do some gold panning and pan down. You've got in the first little, you've got the big chunks of rock and the clay and whatnot. You can sift it down, take those big chunks out, and then pick up the lower sieve and start getting finer. You might end up with a few pebbles, nothing useful in there, but there's a few things that have dropped down to the lower level. Sift through that, and eventually we're boiling it down to something of substance and value. And so we're moving from all of the processes that you would normally engage in and show numbers from, to the expected benefits. What is going to be the benefit, whether to the sponsors, to the company, to the people involved, to those who have financial interest? What is going to be the strategic alignment? How does this benefit the company? How can we make this more beneficial on a public eye or in a particular industry to the company that we're working for? And the vision. What does this give us? Does this project highlight as being some sort of necessity or having some sort of importance? What is our direction? The light at the end of the tunnel. What's our vision for this particular project? And that helps us move into the next subject as we refine things even more of the exactly what, or the charter scope. Looking at high-level goals, and then moving into the scope section of objectives. So we boil it down from the vision, which is a very broad, general overview statement of what we want to move towards. What's the utopia of this project? And then we move into objectives. Well, if we know the utopia, what directly then would affect us moving towards that utopia, or that light at the end of the tunnel, or that idea in mind? What are the things that clearly need to be involved in that? If we clearly see a utopia, well, then significant things would stand out as being useful or being necessary to accomplish in order to move towards that. As you boil it down from vision, objectives, to high-level deliverables, to a list of deliverables, which we'll get into in the project management plan, and then the work breakdown structure. A very grassroots level plan of moving towards that goal. We've got, the objectives, scope statement, giving us the prelude to the scope and why things are in and out of scope. You've got the in and out of scope table, a high-level deliverables assessment, statement, whatever, project boundaries, and key acceptance criteria at a high level. still early on in the project. Now, these don't always necessarily have to be subsections of their own. They can be included in just the charter scope or the exactly what or the scope section, because many projects might not even need all of the things we've covered. If it's a very small project, like hiring new team members, or a staffing thing, or if it's something small, you might not need all of these, but they're there to show that that's where those categories should be if we approach project charter structuring in a logical manner. We've also got the execution framework. So how are we going to do this? We've looked at, okay, the identification. What are we looking at? The project. What project are we looking at? And we've got the who is involved. We've got the why. Why are we here? And why are all these things being talked about? Now we've got just covered the exactly what. What exactly are we here for? Because we've talked about, the vision of the why and the expected benefits, the ROI. We've got the benefit now. We know why we're here. It's a good thing. We should be here. But let's talk about exactly what. Exactly what are we going to do, and how comes right next. We've got the execution framework. How are we going to do it? How are we going to execute this? What's the firstly project approach methodology? Are we using agile or waterfall or the hybrid? What's our risk summary? Summarizing all the risks highlighted from the justification. Our key performance indicators, our quality expectations, our procurement strategy, our change control plan and approach. And then immediately after, obviously, it begs the question after the how, when, and the where. What are our time and milestones? Like, firstly, the schedule, again, high level, target completion date, key milestones, and phase breakdown. And then where do we have any, context or environmental factors that we need to consider? The geographical considerations, environmental considerations, any regulatory jurisdiction, or anything specific to that industry, industry-specific things or constraints that might be worth considering. And yes, not just do we go through these things because there might necessarily be, because there is necessarily a significant thing to be stated, but it's worth going over them with your team so that you can recognize any things that you haven't considered. Maybe you get to the very end of the charter and someone puts a hand up and says, actually, we haven't considered X, Y, Z. It just jogged my memory when we went over the context and environment. These should be interactive meetings and they should bring results. And in order to refine, the things that are in the dark, I believe you should progress through all of these different stages or aspects in a particular logical manner. So I hope that makes sense. I hope this didn't cut out on me on my first go. But that's the methodology, or at least the logic of this current project charter structuring idea that I've had. And that's day one of making a video. We'll see if there's anything else to talk about tomorrow. I might even talk about that today because this took 2 days to make. And so I might have another video to record and upload a little bit later, but we'll see. I don't know if I'm even going to make this a public thing. It might end up just being private. We'll see. But I will see you in the next one.